What's up, YouTube? It's been a minute. It's your boy BZ Chaos here, back for another video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing my second to last mock draft. Today, let's get right into it. So, we got 10 days left, 10 days to the draft. Pick one. It seems pretty easy. It seems pretty set in stone here. It seems like it's Fernando Mendoza. I don't think you could go any other way in that pick. You need a quarterback. You bring in Clint Kubiak, probably the best offensive coordinator in the league last year, at least. One of the better offensive minds in the game. That's a start. I hate the Raiders. I hate the Raiders with a burning passion more than any other team in the league, probably. Their fans are absolutely obnoxious. But they do get a good one here with Fernando Mendoza. Now at pick 2 with the Jets. Now I've heard more steam lately picking up on David Bailey at 2. Now, I've talked about this before. I said I think that's in the realms of possibility. I truly do. Um, it's kind of hard for me not to see them go Reese. Still, I still think he's the best player on the board, but it is the Jets, so who knows. Now at 3, I do think Jeremiah Love could be in play. I don't think that's the way they're going to go. You have 3 running backs. I feel like that's an established room there. Could you go Sonny Styles maybe? Ruben Bain, Bailey? Probably not. I think Moaga is still the best pick here. You're looking to solidify the offensive line for whoever your quarterback is next year. Right now it's Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew. Whoever it's going to be long time, going forward. Ideally, you're going to want a guy like Moaga on, the tackle. Obviously, you have Paris Johnson on one side, Moaga on the other. A little bit of injury concerns have popped up lately, but teams don't seem to be very worried about that. I don't think that'll affect his stock. Adam Schefter tweeted about it too. He said he doesn't think it's going to affect his stock as well. So I think he is the pick at 3. Now, is this where Jeremiah Love goes off the board? I think he really could be, but I don't think it's more likely than an edge rusher, and here's why. The Titans, 5 of their 7 top sack leaders with 2+ sacks last year are not on their team anymore. This is a team that is very weak up front. Obviously, you have Jeffrey Simmons. You trade away T'Vondre Sweat. Jeffrey Simmons is really that guy up front. This team hasn't had really an edge rusher. Harold Landry, I guess. Maybe, I know they had Vic Beasley. He wasn't very good there, though. They really haven't had an edge rusher in a while. Obviously, you bring in a coach like, Robert Saleh. You want to improve the defense. You look at their free agency moves, corner, safety, receiver with Wan'Dale Robinson, offensive line, quarterbacks. You're not seeing 2 things here. I mean, you're not seeing halfback, and you're not seeing an edge rusher. And out of any need on this team, you have to fill this need for an edge rusher. I know they got Jermaine Johnson in that T'Vondre Sweat deal, but he is on an expiring contract, and it's just hard to pass up a guy like David Bailey. In my opinion, if they went Love, props to you. I just don't think it's going to be the pick there. Now the Giants at 5 here. Now, this has been a weird one for me because I was set on downs. I was super set on downs here. And now it's kind of more up in the air because of his, injury concerns, on that turf field. Ruben Bain, probably not going to be the pick. I still don't think they're going to take Love anymore. Sonny Styles could be the pick. I think Downs is in there. I think Delane's in there, obviously. I think it's, Styles, Downs, Delane. I think Carnell Tate would be the last guy on that list for me. Now, this is a team that lost their number 2 receiver with Wan'Dale Robinson. Obviously, this is a team who struggled offensively last year. Obviously, you bring in Isaiah Likely. You have Theo Johnson at tight end. Obviously, you have, the big name would be Malik Neighbors, but after him, Darius Slayton would be really the only guy. They didn't bring in anybody. I think Carnell Tate makes a ton of sense here. I think this should probably just be like a perfect fit. I mean, I like the Browns for him too. but I think this is probably where he's going to go right now. Looking at the Giants receivers, you just don't really have an answer there. It doesn't make sense for them to take a halfback. I know Love's an awesome prospect. I get that. He's probably a top 3 player in the class with Downs, but that just doesn't seem like the pick. You want to help Jackson Dart improve. Obviously, you lose Robinson, like I said. This is a guy you gotta help. You gotta bring in more weapons. I think this Carnell Tate's a good one. He's not my favorite receiver in the draft, but I think he is probably going to be the first one drafted. Now, the Browns at 6. Now, obviously, Tate, I've had there for a minute. I've had Tate at 6 for a little bit, but the other guy I've had mostly would be Spencer Fano, which would probably be the pick here. Sonny Styles doesn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, I know they lose JOK probably for the rest of his career because of, the brutal injury that he had. Downs could make sense. Delane could make sense too. Obviously, the secondary is not the greatest, but I do think Spencer Fano is the pick. This is a team that did add off, multiple offensive linemen. They had Zion Johnson. They had Titus Howard in that trade, but this is an offensive line that lost every single player in the offseason. I think it would be, beneficial to the team if you continue to add to the other 2 spots. Offensive line, no matter if it's like a mediocre offensive line, that is so much better than these below average guys. The Fafele guy, Evan Neal. Some of these guys are just absolutely horrendous. And here's Washington at 7. Now, I think this is probably where Jeremiah Love goes right now. But I think the other team in that running would be Cincy. I think Cincy's a sneaky team to take Jeremiah Love if he falls, because I don't know what the Commanders are going to do. The Commanders did go out there and they did sign an edge rusher. They did sign Owe. They did sign Omenahu. That was their big need. That's what I kept saying. They needed to fill in the offseason an edge rusher, whether it was in the draft or free agency. They spent a ton of money on Owe. I think he got 4 years, $120 million. That settles that one for me. It does. I think Caleb Downs is in play. I think Sonny Styles is in play. I think Makai Lemon's in play. Mansour Delane. The list goes on. This is a team with a decent amount of needs, I would say. And at running back, you sign, Rashad White to a 1-year deal. You sign Jerome Ford to a 1-year deal. Chris Rodriguez leaves in free agency. Who was your best running back last year for, most of the year? I know Bill, whatever. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was decent. Not really a game changer. And I think this is a team that wants to take work away from Jaden Daniels in the running game, because if we look back at 2025 as a season, I think he ran the ball too much. It was similar to RG3, who got hurt because of that play style. And you don't want to repeat history, as history always does tend to repeat itself anyway, where you have a quarterback who's super injury prone. You get a guy who, taking that leverage away from him, very capable running back behind a decent offensive line. And I think Jeremiah Love just makes the most sense here. I think if it's not going to be him, I think Makai Lemon would be the guy I look at there. I don't really think anyone else is going to be the answer. Now, with the Saints at 8, another hard one. I think Delane could be the play. I do. I think Caleb Downs could be decent. Could be. Sonny Styles could be in there as well. Obviously, he did sign a linebacker with Devin Lloyd from the Jags. But what's this, Makai Lemon, tackle, probably not. Obviously, they took a tackle last year very high, and that was the best tackle in the class. So I think Makai Lemon makes the most sense. I am very set on this pick. I have been set on this pick for a while. I think this is just a match made in heaven with the quarterback, the coach, and, who the wide receiver 1 is right now with Olave. I think this is a team that's going to be really good in a couple of years. And I'm really excited to see it. If they get Mekhi Lemon as well, this offense is going to be really, really good. Obviously, the wide receiver too would be. I don't think they signed one, so it might signify, what they want to do. Brandon Cooks was in there. Rashid Shaheed last year, obviously too. And then besides that, it's not a lot. Bub Means, Jalen Polk. I think those are two guys that are going to be there this year, as they were injured last year. But as you can tell by the sound of those players, not great. Those guys don't have a lot of career yards, so wouldn't be the most ideal situation. Now at 9 with the Kansas City Chiefs, hard to imagine they don't go Mansour Lane. Now this is a team that lost their two best corners, obviously, with you know McDuffie and then Jalen Watson, both to the LA Rams. Weirdly enough, you know it's kind of just you got to fill that need at corner. This is a team that always kills their corner picks. They've had really good corners for a while. Marcus Peters, obviously, they had him, you know, and McDuffie. It's just a good place to play. It's not, it's a team that wins. It's a team that's going to compete. Them at 9 is an absolute blessing for whatever the player they're going to get. They had Kenneth Walker, obviously, that takes him out of the Jeremiah Love sweepstakes, really. That also signifies that they think or thought at that time that he would go in the top 9. So, what's their play? Besides that, Sonny Styles could be the play. I don't think so. Ruben Bain, I don't mind, but this character concern stuff is definitely interesting. I saw the Lions GM talk about it today, where he said they know about it and they're not worried about it at the moment. Definitely, definitely an interesting scenario to watch, especially how that can affect his stock. But I still think the play and pick probably is going to be Mansour Lane. You could make the case for McCoy. We've waited all off season. We finally saw him, show it in the workout at Tennessee. He ran a good 40. He was looking like it himself, and it was a great sign to see after he's been out so long. But I still think this pick's going to be Mansour Lane. Now with the Bengals at 10. That's a pretty good board. Styles, Bain, and Downs on the board for them. I think the pick is Styles or Downs. I mean, Bain could work, but these guys are too good to pass up on, and think I think Sonny Styles. This is hard. I'm having a tough time picking this. I was having a tough time when I was going through it before. Because either player makes a lot of sense. I think Downs is probably just a more talented player. I think he just has more upside as well. And this is a secondary that could really use a leader like him. So now at 11 with the Miami Dolphins. Now this is a team that's going to really suck. This team is a team that could use anyone here. Any single player on the board would help them. Malik Willis, Devon Achane, the offensive line's okay. Wide receivers, terrible. Could they take Jordan Tyson? Probably, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense to do so. Kenyon Sadiq could make sense as well. I think, a tackle could make sense, a safety, Jermon McCoy as well. But I think most likely you're just going to go probably best player available, which is Sonny Styles. Ruben Bain also in there as well. I mean, it's really between those two and McCoy for me. And I think just the pick would be Sonny Styles. I think this is way too talented of a player. I know you like Jordan Brooks. He's been pretty good in Miami after he was okay in Seattle. But you don't turn down a player like Sonny Styles, especially at pick 11. Now, with the Cowboys, like I say all the time, this is a team with a couple needs going into the offseason. Clear as day. An edge rusher, a corner, and a linebacker. Sonny Styles off the board, Mansour Lane off the board. Ruben Bain here does make a lot of sense, but you cannot pass up a talent like Jermon McCoy at 12. No chance in hell for me. I would not pass up on him. Now at 13 with the LA Rams, I think the pick is Dylan Dieneman. This is a very, very talented safety whose stock has risen a ton. He was, a mid-second rounder, and now he's sitting at, rank 11 on PFF. That's fucking crazy, bro. That is really fucking crazy. He is just a very, I mean, this is just an awesome safety class. You got three guys who are probably going to be top, you know, first round picks, probably top 25 picks with, McNeil Warren as well. It's pretty incredible that I can't remember the last time I saw three safeties go in the top, 25. So it's pretty cool. It really is. Now at 14 with the Ravens, this is a harder pick. I do think Ruben Bain could make a lot of sense. I know I've had Tyson here a lot. I think Ione makes a lot of sense too. But it's hard for me to imagine Bain would make it past them here. I think Bain or Ione just make the most sense. For, you know, could you go Sadiq? Like, maybe. I don't rule it out. Andrews is 30. Like I said, I think Tampa's really in his sweepstakes too. But I think, it's probably going to be Bain, Sadiq, or Ione here. Or Tyson. I do really like Tyson here, but I just don't think they're going to take Tyson over Ruben Bain, even though they signed Hendrickson. But Hendrickson's older and injury prone. So, do they want to run out, Kyle Van Noy at edge rusher at the age of 33 or 34? I don't think so. So I'm gonna go Bain here. Oh, if it lets me pick him. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna go Bain here. I think that's just the smart pick. And now at 15, I'm gonna go with Kenyon Sadiq. I think Mike Evans leaves. I think Chris Godwin's heading until the end. Egbuka's good. He is pretty good. I think he is top 10 wide receiver upside, but Sadiq on this offense on a team that needs to win to keep, the GM and not owner, GM and the coach in their seats. This is a good way to do it. Now at 16 with the Jets, I think Jordan Tyson could be in the cards. I do think Omar Cooper could end up going ahead of him. I really do. I don't think a tackle is going to be the pick here. Obviously, we took Arvell Reese earlier, so it kind of just opens up, the board for what's next. The real question would it be Ty Simpson? I think he is in the realms of possibility. I think this is a team that's gonna aim to suck this year. I do think they're gonna aim to suck this year, so they can draft a quarterback next year. I think they're gonna run with Geno, and I think they're gonna maybe Brady Cook, maybe Tyrod as a backup. I really don't know. It's gonna be a bad year for them, and I think it's gonna get Aaron Glenn fired. I I don't. The Jets. I mean, the Sabres just broke the record for the longest team left with playoff drought, and then it leaves the Jets, and the Jets don't seem to be going in the right direction. The Sabres and the NHL obviously going in the right direction. We just haven't seen them do it. I mean, you take multiple quarterbacks early. Obviously, you had Mark Sanchez way back when. That was the last time they were in the playoffs. You got Darnold. You had Geno early in 2013. You had Darnold. Then you had Zach Wilson, and you bring in Justin Fields this year, who was former number 11 pick, and he didn't really do anything either. You had Aaron Rodgers as well at the end of his career, I guess. I mean, that injury really fucked him, but he wasn't the same player when they got him. It's a team with no direction. They hired their GM from the Broncos. I think he was an assistant GM, but I think he has a better idea where they're going because, the Broncos are a pretty good franchise most of the time. John Elway tenure, maybe not the best. He couldn't draft a quarterback either. So, but this pick here at 16, I think it should be Tyson. I do, and I think him and Wilson would be nice. Obviously, Mason Taylor's in there as well. Uh, Besides that, I just don't see another player. I don't see another guy on the here where I'm like, that's the pick. I don't. So at 17, I think the Lions are just going to take a tackle. Like I said, Taylor Decker's gone. I've said this a couple times. I thought he was going to leave. I thought he was going to get, I thought he was going to retire, to be honest. But he's going to opt to hit free agency. He's going to, probably join a new team by this, start of the new year. We'll see what happens. Now at 18 with the Minnesota Vikings, I think McNeil Warren is the likely pick because obviously Harrison Smith at the end, he I don't think he announced his retirement, but he hasn't been signed back. But they also did lose Cam Bynum, last offseason to the Colts. That was brutal too. I mean, the safety position is kind of a weak point. This is a team with a lot of good players and not a lot of holes. Obviously, you bring in Kyler. The big hole on offense would probably be running back. And I do think Jadarian Price has first round possibility. I don't think he's going to go at 18. I think most likely this pick is going to be McNeil Warren. Now, at 19 with the Carolina Panthers, I would love if they got Sadiq, but it's not going to happen. I don't think Sadiq's going to make it past the Bucks unless they opt for Ione. So we'll see. Now at 19 though, obviously edge rusher was a big possibility that I talked about a bunch. They go out there, they sign. I mean, they spent a pretty penny, right? They signed Jalen Phillips from the Eagles for 4 years. I think 130 million. That's a lot, and they're putting a lot into that contract. I believe it's Dan Morgan, their GM. I think this is a team that could benefit from another pass catcher. I like Coker, I do. I like Ted, but I still think they're missing a player. Leggett turned out to be pretty shitty. Um, so I think Omar Cooper's in play. I do. But I think the other guy would be Terrell. I think this is a team that could be, benefit from another corner. Obviously, Dallas, the pick after them. We already took that corner. So kind of just falls all in place here. I think Terrell just makes sense. I've said before I think he was a top five top sorry not top five top 15 talent in this class, but I think this is a guy whose stock hasn't really improved as much as I expected. He was kind of hurt through the tryout, the trainings and camps and whatnot that he was doing pre-draft, which kind of just messes up his possibility of going above McCoy. Obviously, McCoy participated in the most recent workout, and he was looking pretty good. Terrell hasn't had that benefit yet, so it's just unfortunate. Now, Dallas at 20. I don't like picking these players because I've said before, picking Keldrick Falk has not made anybody happy ever. Um, Same with Cassius Hell. Probably the same with TJ Parker. I think the most likely pick is going to be Mesidor here, based on they want to win now. Jerry Jones has said this already. They have a pretty good team. Edge rusher is a big problem. Obviously, he's very pro ready at 25 years old. I think this is a guy who can make an instant impact on that defense where it really struggled on the edge, obviously at corner as well, like I talked about before. I think this is a team that could end up taking two corners pretty early. They have a lot of picks as well. Obviously, they traded the Micah Parsons, and they got two firsts from that from Green Bay this year and next year. So who knows what happens? I think this is a corner needy team. So Terrell is there, definitely a possibility. And like I said, I think Omar Cooper, strong possibility for them as well. Now the Steelers at 21. I do think Ione is possible, but I think more likely than that, this is a team that needs a quarterback. Obviously you have Will Howard. Aaron Rodgers really hasn't seemed like they want him back. Um, you have DK Metcalf. You have Pat Fryermuth. Then you bring in Michael Pittman. You have Rico Dowdle now to add to Jalen Warren. I think this is decent offense. I think Mike McCarthy wants a quarterback who's capable, and Ty Simpson's stock has really continued to rise the last couple of weeks. Through Dan Orlovsky talking about him. I mean, Mel Kiper raves about him. All these guys say he's better than Mendoza. I think it's really just gonna end up seeing him go in the first round, whether it's them, a trade up, the Cleveland, whoever. I don't really know. I think Ty Simpson is the pick here, though. He could go earlier. Who freaking knows? Who really does? Like I said, I think the Jets is a very strong possibility, but again, you don't know what the direction they're going to go is. It looks like they want to be bad this year and get a really good quarterback, but who knows? Like Arch, Dante Moore, obviously he can't go back one more year. So actually, I think that's a lie. I think he can. Um, but at 22, I think the pick here is just Ione. I've said before this. I mean, he's probably a top 15 player in the class. It's just whether he goes up there. Um, like I said, I said the Ravens were a possibility. I said the Bucks, could be a possibility for the Jets after they lose Vera Tucker and John Simpson. Does make a lot of sense. Dallas, offensive line, Steelers even. Who freaking knows? Now the Eagles at 23. You know, this team just traded for Dontavian Wicks. Obviously, they had signed Marquise Brown. They didn't let Dallas Goedert go. He back for one more year. Obviously, you have AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. I still think this is a team that most likely doesn't take a receiver, but I think receiver is still in the possibility with Omar Cooper. I think more likely than that, though. They do love drafting players from Georgia, of course. And CJ Allen would be an awesome player on that defense as well with Fangio. Obviously, Blake Miller makes a lot of sense. Caden Proctor, I've said before, would be an awesome player for this team. Obviously, Lane Johnson's close to the end. Jordan Mailata on the other side. Landon Dickerson. Right guard's kind of a question mark. And then you have, you know, Cam Jurgens, I think it is. And he wasn't very good this year. The offensive line itself wasn't that good this year, honestly. So that's kind of just why Blake Miller's in there. I think C.J. Allen's probably just going to be the pick, though. He's just way too good of a talent there, and they just love the Georgia boys. Now at 24, though, with the Browns, I think Omar Cooper is the pick here. I do. Obviously, I took Spencer Fano earlier. I think this just I think this is the perfect fit. I mean, Omar Cooper, I think, is an undervalued prospect. Obviously, they didn't really play to his benefit. If he was in a better school where they play better offense. Not a lot of the RPO stuff. You kind of saw him shine in a couple of those big moments this year when they went away from that. So that shit really does show to me that he is the real deal. And who needs? I mean, I'm not sure many teams need a receiver more than Cleveland does. So why not? Why not take the chance, right? Now at 25, I think the pick is Cade McDonald. Caleb Banks, I like too, bro. But the injury is concerning, unfortunately, and it's going to hurt his stock, and he's definitely not going to be a guaranteed first anymore. It really is a shame, because he was looking really good. He had a really good combine, but since then he has just plummeted his stock, unfortunately. Now, with the Bills, obviously they do lose David Edwards in free agency to the New Orleans Saints, so that does open up the possibility to draft an offensive lineman. I have heard a lot of stuff about Chase Basantis going in the first round. I think Pregnon is right in there with him. I think most likely it's going to be one of these two that they take. I think most likely it is going to be Pregnon, though. And I don't think it's much of a reach. I think this is just the right pick. The Bills have really had a very stable offensive line for the last the Josh Allen era, really. This is a team that's just really focused on protecting their quarterback, which you just absolutely love to see at all times. So, moving on here, 27 with the Niners. I think the pick, any of these guys works. I think Iheanacho probably is the right pick, but I think Proctor's going to go before him. Proctor is the more talented player, and he definitely has the most upside probably mm, more than Fano even too. His size and mass would are just crazy for a tackle. 28 though with the Texans. No, they're not going to take a running back like it's suggesting. I think probably the pick. This is probably where a guy like Chase Basantis goes. I think like I said, I think he could have gone at 26. I think this is a possibility where another guard goes. He's not going to make it back to them at their next pick. He has a lot of talk about being a first round pick. I think why not? You know, really, why not? Now at 29 with the Chiefs. Do they go an edge rusher? I don't think they'd be happy taking any of those guys. I think more likely than that, it's going to be Ian Achor. This is a guy who has been really raved about a lot this offseason. His stock has gone up a lot. Mike Vrabel doing some questionable things maybe, but he was, training with him too. They were doing reps with each other at his workout. Pretty cool. If Vrabel's doing that, maybe he is the real deal. He'll probably be nasty in Kansas City. Obviously, they cut Jawan Taylor. Clears up a huge hole for them at tackle. Now with the Miami Dolphins, I think this is where you go and take a receiver, whether it's Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, Chris Bell. I think it definitely could be in play there as well. I think most likely it's going to be Casey Concepcion. I think he's the best receiver here. I think he's the most upside out of those guys. Maybe Bell has more, but Bell does have that injury. So the Dolphins would have the ability to wait on that, though. So now with the Pats at 31, I think they're going to go Blake Miller. This is a team that just needs help on the offensive line. And, Will Campbell wasn't very good last year. So moving him inside might not be a bad idea. And Morgan Moses is a little older, so not a bad shout. And I think here with the Seahawks, I think the pick is Jadarian Price. I'm pretty set on him going as a first rounder. I do think Minnesota is a very possible team to take him at 19 if they don't trade up for Jeremiah Love, which I do think is a strong possibility. Besides that, I'm not sure where he could land. I think Achane could get traded. Maybe Miami could be in talks. Some of these teams are not set in stone. I think Dallas is a strong possibility if Love is dropping a little bit around here. 8, 9, 10. Dallas could be a team that moves up as well. Obviously, Javonte Williams is a really good year, but who knows what the future holds. Baltimore could also be a team that takes a running back. Keaton Mitchell leaves. Justice Hill was injured. Derrick Henry is nearing the end, probably. He could probably play another 7 years, though. He is one of the craziest running back talents I've ever seen. But hopefully, anyone agrees with these picks. I think I did a better job this time. I hope I did. But I will see y'all next time, which will be before the draft, and we will be seeing what shakes out. Hopefully, we get some trades before then. I'm hoping Will Levis, Anthony Richardson might get dealt. Something like that would be nice to see. But that's all for me, like I said. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace.